Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another interview. Today I'm talking with Jordan Young and joined also by Anthony as well. And Jordan is somebody who, if you've been following the channel for a while, he was actually one of our earliest interviews with a former member. And so, obviously, back when we did the initial interview with Jordan, the time span between him leaving the WMSCOG to him then coming out and telling a story was smaller. And so now he's had some more time to be away from the organization. And so we thought it'd be fun to kind of do a check-in and see how things are going for him now, and kind of where he's at, how he's progressed, and his healing process and things like that. And so if you would like to check out that first interview with Jordan, I'll make sure to link that in the video description below. But I think either way, whether you've watched that first one or not, hopefully you'll be blessed and enjoy this conversation. Before we get into that, I just wanted to say thank you again to all of the supporters of the channel. There's many people who have been just faithfully supporting for a number of years now and continue to, and that is what allows me to continue to do all this. Financial support kind of goes up and down at times, just depending on who's giving and who's not. And sometimes that impacts the amount of videos I'm doing. And so you might have noticed that recently it's been a bit slower on the channel. And my hope is to be able to get back to being a bit more consistent with posting regular content. But thank you to everybody supporting the channel. And of course, if you are interested at all in helping me to continue doing all of this, I'll put links in the video description below to the different ways that you can support. And so with all that said, I hope you enjoy my and Anthony's conversation with Jordan Young.
You saw more leaders, more and more, just become like robots. It was like a herd mentality as well. You talk the same way, like you eat the same way, you pray the same way. Like there was no, it was just all the same. Like the best way I can describe it was just people. You become a robot in the system, in the cog. And
the WMSCOG.
In the WMSCOG. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good one. over the past few years since I left the cult, it's really hard. It's really hard to explain, but there's this like residue that's left over in your mind and you can't shake it. It's hard to shake it off. And you fall into this rut. Like you really fall into this mental rut, at least for myself. I can't really speak for everyone else, but I fell into like a mental rut where I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't eating right. I wasn't doing the things I needed to do to take care of myself mentally, physically, and spiritually. So then I started, like I said, I was telling Anthony, just start from the bottom, just build good habits, do the little things, wash your car, clean up around the house, spend more quality time with family, build those good habits, build that foundation, and then, start going on walks, go to the gym a couple times a week, and it gets easier, cut out the sugar, cut out fast food. And it becomes habitual. I mean, it's so hard.
I like McDonald's, man.
It's so hard to do it in the beginning. Like it's so hard to just jump right into it.
Yep.
But it
gets easier, right? Those habits when you build connections in your mind, and those choices that once seemed so daunting and impossible, it becomes more of a habitual thing.
Exactly.
Something that you don't have to put a bunch of mental energy into to make yourself do them. It just becomes a natural part of how you go about your day.
Yeah. Me and my wife, we like going to the gym together. So it's like a bonus. That's a bonus right there.
Oh, good.
Yeah. We like going together at times. I always tell her when she doesn't feel like going, I have to drag her sometimes. Sometimes she has to drag me. There's been times like that. But we always tell each other, you always regret not going to the gym, right? If you don't go, you always regret not going. But if you end up just going, you're never going to regret going to the gym. Like there's not one time you're going to regret going to the gym. So we think about we think about that, and we just go. We just, even though it doesn't get too cold out here. Just weather's not bad over here, but sometimes in the winter it can get down to like 40 degrees, and it's like, man, I just want to stay home and drink some hot chocolate or something.
You're in California, right? Are you still in California?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you talked about like being in a rut for a while after you left. What have you been able to? Do you feel like identify what exactly that was, where that was coming from? Like something in you that was, kind of a hindrance in a sense, it sounds like, from you doing just basic things to take care of yourself. Have you been able to kind of point a finger on what exactly that was, like what that residue was?
Yeah, it was just like not caring. You lose all care. Like, it's like when you get out the cult, and you just like, it's almost kind of like, all right, what am I doing this for then? Like, what am I living for?
The thing with you too is that you joined when you were a kid.
Yeah.
You never had a life where you built these habits.
Yeah.
You only had the habits that were really created in this environment.
Exactly.
We don't have to worry too much for the future. Too much self-care is an idol, to eat good, and to, if you don't eat whatever is provided for you and in abundance, then, then you're not thankful, you're not grateful. So you were born and raised in that sort of environment since you were a little kid. And, other people, they may have had a life before where they did exercise, they did know, and then you get caught up in this like culture of not caring for your body. So, you could go back and, enter the world again and know what you did before, but you didn't have anything before, not really. So it's learning fresh. It's all fresh, new habits, not like remembering what you did, in your early 20s or in your teens.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thankful for this. My grandmother, who's still a deaconess, who's still in the church. She's still a deaconess in the church. I will always, I'm very thankful because she took care of me, my little brother, who's also still in the church. She took care of me and my brother, and she always like fed us like very healthy foods. Like, we only had fast food like once a month, and she always kept us pretty healthy growing up. And then after, of course, I joined the military. That's kind of where, I was always just exercising, working out, so I was able to stay fit. But my eating habits were terrible. But, I was like so young. I was like 18, 19, 20 years old. And I was able to just eat whatever, and I'll just, burn it off. You know what I mean? However, after I left the military, and combined with also being in the cult, you're not really thinking about eating healthy or, trying to stay fit or anything like that. So those bad habits continued on, and it just, without much exercise and care for the body, then, things spiral. They spiral down. And you see that a lot with people in the WMSCOG. Like, you do have your healthy members, of course. There are some ones who, before life in the cult, they did have a good exercise routine, health routine, whatever and whatnot. But yeah, you have those who just, they don't care what happens to their body. They, there's no regard. There's no regard for it. And going back to your original question, Jordan, that's pretty much what it was. Like, I had no care. I didn't know what it was to really take care of myself. I had to discover that. I had to find that. And yeah, it's a process. It's definitely a process. You go from feeling like crap, not moving much, my son, I mean, he loves running around, he loves playing, so I look at him with all this, this little ball of energy. He's 8 years old now. And I'm like, man, I want to, be able to do stuff with him, take him to the park, play basketball, and go hiking and all this cool stuff. And thankfully we've upped that, up those activities where we're able to do a lot of those things, and we're just having fun. It's ultimately fun. We go bike riding a lot. Like, riding bikes is something I love to do as a teenager. I used to ride my bike to church. Like, just doing things with the family, going to the gym with my wife. It's just, you begin to appreciate things more, when you take care of yourself more.
Things that you didn't really have permission to appreciate before. There's so many things that you aren't allowed to place value on.
Yeah.
I feel like this is something I can relate to, having grown up in evangelical, culture, and not to say that all evangelicals are this way, but I definitely know that there's been elements of that in myself that, I've had to look at and realize, I guess it's just like, whether it's the WMSCOG telling you this world is bad, this world is evil, nothing here matters because Father is going to return anytime. And so don't waste your time on jobs, on family, on health, on, there's that we can point out against the WMS, but I feel like there are, there's elements of that exist, I think, within at least a certain representation of Christianity that I've experienced, that I look at now and think is not good. And it more stems from similar principles of the world is evil. And even like you yourself are bad, stained with original sin, and this world is passing away, so nothing really matters. And I think there's a way to kind of hold some of those ideas and not take it to sort of an apathetic place, but I think very often it leads to that. It leads to sort of this apathy about I have people in my life who have kind of moved away from at least some of the traditional versions of Christianity or the more strict or the forms of it that they grew up with, and who talk about how, for the first time, they're actually thinking about, they have a family, but they're thinking about financial implications of the future, that things that they've never thought about, and, what does it look like to invest? What does it look like to think about retirement and things like that even on, not just exclusively in the WMS or cults, but, this is just something that I think religion, in taken in unhealthy directions, can just cause people to have this sort of apathy, because you're just I guess one way I've heard it said is like, you're so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. I'm sure some people have heard that before, but I think there's some truth there, that you can become so narrow focused on doctrinal things. And I think in many situations, a lot of these doctrines and ideas about what the Bible is actually attempting to communicate, I think they're misguided in a lot of places anyways, but it ends up leaving people to just be apathetic about their health, about finances, about all these things. And then the other level too, of where you just feel like it's bad. I remember having deep wrestling matches in my own emotional, with myself, of whether, could I go and watch, like, for instance, like the Avengers, like, is it wrong? Is it just this waste of time where I'm just, I'm wasting my life and I should be focused on other things, and I shouldn't go see a movie. And so I just think that that's an example, at least in myself, where I think that's just not healthy. That's not, I think, taking, embracing Christianity in, I think, a way that's actually conducive to your own life and the people around you, because it just turns you almost into a shell of a human being,
Right.
where you're pushing away every experience that you might deem as worldly, quote unquote, and I think it actually can ultimately have negative consequences.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because the way the cult operates, it kind of forms your mind to not want to take care of yourself. However, what the Bible states, that your body is your temple, and you should want to take care of your body. You should you want to take care of your temple. So it's
right.
It's like the more like we're probably gonna get into it. I've recently, for the past year, have started going back to church, and I've been able to realize certain things since I've been going back to church. And there's so many I'm discovering just over the past year or so many different things that were just so counterintuitive that the cult would teach. And it's just and how toxic it is, even down just to the person. It's like yourself. It's just not good. Mentally, physically, spiritually, all the way around. It doesn't build a healthy person. But yeah, over the past year or so, going back to church, it's been a pretty eye-opening experience, I would say.
Yeah. And that's one of the main things I would like to kind of hear about, because I know, when we first talked in that first interview 5 years ago or so, you were in a different place. But can you, just for people who aren't familiar with that first interview where they heard your story, how long were you in the church?
So I was in the WMSCOG for 15 years. I was baptized in August of 2003, and I'd left, I want to say October or November. Probably, I think it was October. It was around the autumn feast. It was right in between Feast of Trumpets and Day of Atonement. 2018. Yeah, 2018. October 2018 was when I left. When I completely left. And that was even after 6 months of being on and off, of going to a couple services on the Sabbath, going home in between services and stuff like that. I was already kind of in an out processing type of mindset. But yeah, after I had left for a period of about, I want to say after 5 or 6 months after I'd left, I was in a very, very dark place, because I felt like by me leaving, my community was ripped away from me. Because if you don't keep the commandments, right? If you don't keep the Sabbath and all the feasts and everything like that, then you're kind of looked down upon. You kind of just get forgotten almost. A couple people reached out, asked how I was doing. But that was pretty much it. And then that about 5 or 6 months after I left, I put out my first video on my YouTube channel explaining detailing my experience in the cult. So that's what kind of helped me reach out to people and help people who were in need. And that kind of gave me life, people reaching out to me, asking for advice, family members, current members at the time, reaching out, asking for help, and that's what I find fulfillment in, ultimately, is in helping people, giving them the best advice. And over the few years, I want to say, 5 years now, the best thing is when people come out, especially if I've known them before, and I've seen this over several times, former deacons, former missionaries, they come out and they reach out to me, or I'll reach out to them, and we'll have a nice conversation. And it's the most gratifying thing ever to be able to just have a conversation with someone who you've known, that were in the cult, you were in the cult with, and you can just talk like regular people. I found a lot of joy in that.
So I'm curious, Anthony, I know like you just talked about, Jordan, how you get like a lot of meaning and purpose out of helping others. And do you feel that way too? I feel like I probably know the answer, because you spend, I know Anthony, I feel like is at a point where he puts more time into doing all this than I do in a lot of ways. I mean, I have to go and edit all these videos and so forth, but Anthony devotes a lot of his time to this, which I know I tell you thank you a lot, but I'm going to tell you again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you helping with all this and continuing to host these interviews with me. It's just so helpful, and I think continues to add a whole other layer of perspective and questions that I think help bring out people's stories. But I mean, do you feel like that's one of the reasons why you continue to do it? Do you feel like it gives you, I mean, I guess, what does it do for you? Why do you do it?
Why do I do it?
Why do you do it?
No, just no, I definitely feel the exact same way as Jordan. When you help people, it's kind of a reward. I spent a lot of time, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of the members actually have, the current members in their mind. You know, a lot of the people who go into these sort of organizations have this idealistic mind where they want to do something good, they want to help people, and that's why, you know, they believe that's what they're doing, and that's why they dedicate so much. So I think it's just a certain type of person who will find themselves in an organization like this, and, you know, just having just the mind to help. And I think that doesn't go away when you leave. I think you're still looking to do good. I was kind of misled on how I was doing good when I was in the organization. And, you know, some of my favorite things to do was the volunteer work. Some of my least favorite things to do is spend like 40 minutes trying to pose for the picture for the group photo. But, you know, like, can't we just clean up the trash and get back with our day and do something here? But
Right.
No, I definitely enjoy helping people. And then when people reach out and, you know, they just let me know that it was really helpful, and I could spend my time talking to people after, or who are going through that process, and share my experience. It definitely is helpful to me and my growth, and, you know, how I feel about my experience. I feel like in a way God gave me this church experience to help people who have this unique situation that not everyone will get, not everyone can identify with, but Jordan can identify with it. I can identify with it. So people have these resources, and the resources are out there for people that have been in the World Mission Society and who are looking to leave, or just any sort of cult group, because a lot of these are very similar. But, you know, we have a unique insight to be able to communicate and help these people going through a very difficult time. So
yeah, it's interesting because you guys spent years, and again, Anthony, you were in for 11 and a half,
10 and a half. Yeah.
10 and a half. So, you know, both of you guys, like you said, in even as members, you were wanting to help people. I mean, that's people shouldn't be deluded in thinking that everybody who gets into these groups is just evil or you know, whatever kind of silly ideas people can kind of get about cult members. But you wanted to help people, and that's why you spent so much time as members going out on the streets or to shopping centers or parks or wherever it was that you would go and preach, trying to get people to avoid hell, you know, trying to get people to avoid pain and suffering. Now it's like on the other hand, you're still doing that same thing. You're just trying to help people avoid the hell that is the WMSCOG.
Yeah, it's much better than door to door in the summertime. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and you can actually, yeah, I bet. But you can actually see and you've experienced the harm. You know, where this idea of this impending threat of hell if you don't, you know, bow to mother and father is just this abstract concept that you never really see you never really see that actually play out in reality. And the end of the world coming, you're trying to help people to prevent people from experiencing this terrible thing that will happen when Father returns. But obviously, though they will dangle that out like a carrot in front of you all the time, it never happens. You never actually see the benefits, I suppose, of getting people in this organization. It's the story, this narrative that's always pushed in front of you saying, hey, you getting people in this church is helping them avoid, the wrath of Father when he returns, or hell, or whatever it is. But now you've actually been in that group and you both have experienced the negative harm that's caused you. And now actually helping people to not get in, or helping people to, who have left, to kind of deconstruct or heal or answer their questions and all that, it actually has tangible, like visible results and benefits. And so I would guess it's much more rewarding on this side of things, the way you're helping people, than it was as a member.
Yeah, I would like to add to that, because talking to so many, and I saw it in myself, is when you leave, especially if you spent a lot of time there, it's very easy to build anger, to have this built up anger for the church, because you were in there wasting all your time, and you put in all this effort and ultimately amounted to nothing. Of course, there are some benefits, like after I like to try to find a positive in these things, because we were preaching to a lot of people, we're talking to a lot of people, we're stopping, we were approaching random strangers, knocking on random doors. I obtained the skill to be able to talk to people, and how to become a people person. But it's okay to be angry, but you do encounter a fork in the road, and you have a decision to make. It's very easy for that anger to turn into some irrational action, where you start doing something that is not going to be beneficial for anybody. And going back to taking care of yourself, I want the lack of taking care of myself after I left the cult. Some of that was anger, however, like I said, there's a fork in the road. There's a decision that you can make. You can take your experience in the cult, and you could just be angry about it and disregard everything and not care about life, or you can take the positives. You could take the positives of what the skills that you've built up when you were in the cult, people skills, teaching, or whatever it may be. There's always a positive and a negative outcome, to the experience of being in the cult. And talking to a lot of people, I do see, talking to your audience here, who are mainly probably former members of the cult, it's totally fine to be angry. Like it's normal to be angry about it. But I feel like looking at myself, I had to be careful, because that anger was leading me down a dark place at times. And I had to identify, exactly how to form and construct that anger and transform it into like positive energy, to where I'm now able to look at the world in a better light. I'm able to just have a very much more positive outlook on life than I did before. When I left the cult, it was, I would say I became a pretty negative person, and it's not like me. Like, even when I was in the cult, I was always positive, making people, like, try to make people laugh, try to make jokes. And now I'm kind of, over the past few years now, I'm getting back to that. I feel like my joy is coming back, especially like being around like my son and like my family. I'm able to feel more joyous than I've ever had. Like, right now I'm at a point in my life I've never felt better. I'm in the best mental state I've ever been. I've accomplished some things. I was able to finish school, get my bachelor's degree. I was able to enter a career field that I dreamed about since I was a child, working in tech. So it's definitely looking up. When you leave the cult, it's like it's so easy to not be not be motivated to really do much, just because you poured all this energy into doing stuff for the cult, and it's like you have no more left in the tank, especially for those who've been in for a while. But I promise you have a lot left in the tank. It's just reconstructing your mindset and just being positive. That's all I'm really about now. Just really trying to be positive with everybody I meet, having a really optimistic outlook on pretty much everything that I go through. And it really makes things easier. Like earlier, we were talking about going to the gym. Going to the gym is like so helpful for the mental state. I would say it's more helpful for the mental state than it is for the body. Like before Anthony, you go to the gym, you know this. Before you start your set, you're thinking about, you're picking up these weights, right? You're like, man, I gotta work hard to push these weights, man. It's gonna suck. It's gonna be hard, So and you're doing
especially
this,
leg day.
Today I just came back from leg day, especially leg day, and you're thinking about, you're seeing that weight on the rack, and you're like, man, this is gonna suck. This is gonna hurt. But you're putting yourself through this multiple times, right? For however long you're in the gym. And I always like to end out my workout with a 1.5 mile jog. And I hate running, like, especially from being in the military. Like, man, running sucked. So now every time I end my workout, I'm like, all right, I gotta jog this 1.5 miles. I gotta get over it. I just gotta conquer it. But over time, you keep doing it in this repetition. And because you're doing something so hard, especially for the mental, it's really hard on your mental state in the gym. Because you're thinking about how you're going to overcome this weight and overcome these obstacles. Everything else in life just becomes easier. Like nothing phases me anymore. Like, of course, there's going to be some there's going to be some hard times. I'm married. It's not easy all the time. Jordan, you're married. You know this. It's not easy all the time. But the more you put yourself through some challenges, I think that's one of the keys in life. I wouldn't say it's the key in life, but it's one of the very major keys in life. If you put yourself through challenges and do hard things, then the rest of your life just feels easier. And the result of that, you just become more happy. You just become happier, and I'm just ranting on here.
I think it's great that you've gone on this this journey. I know that where you were when you made your first video on the channel, I was thinking to quiz you on the mother's teachings, like at the beginning of the last video, to confirm that you were legit. But I
still remember them. I think.
I think that they changed a little bit.
Yeah,
they've reworded them, but I think that where you are when you completely change your life leaving, because I listened to it just earlier today, and what you were saying about how you weren't really able to make a lot of classmate friends. Your social environment was exactly just who was in the church, because you couldn't really relate to people outside.
Mm-hmm.
And now your whole life kind of changed when you left. And I know that for me, it was, even though I had I came in my early mid-20s, and then I left, later on, and I had a social network outside, and I knew what life was like as somebody not in the church. When I left, and I think when most people leave, there's a bit of, first it's sorrow, and then it turns into anger. Like you get a little like frustrated about so many different things that you didn't let yourself think about before, and now you're able to see. Also, it was a time of trying new things that you couldn't do before. So for me, it would be like, I know I tried marijuana, that wasn't for me. I tried, that was a plug right now for the Pit Pod, but I tried, I'm gonna drink beer with dinner tonight, and just like little things. I'm gonna grow my beard. I like that one. I kept that one, but
yeah, I'm trying.
It suits
I'm having
you.
a hard time.
But I think that it's a journey for people who leave. I think it's like having that anger for a bit is healthy and normal, but I do agree, and I like that, evolving out of that. And that's kind of what I find really interesting is we have, the interview that you had done like 4 or 5 years ago, and now we have you and where you have evolved to today. What has it been like emotionally, mentally, and the connection and the relevance of the World Mission Society in your life back then versus how relevant is the church in your life right now?
Well, I would say back then, of course, you have this resentment. Now I've kind of grown out of that, just say, I mean, it is what it is. What happened, happened. And you just got to make the best of it. It may sound cliche, but I mean, I don't know how else to put it. You just have to make the best of it. Because I've spent so much time, and in high school I played football and I had to quit playing football. So I can always, like, it's so easy for me to just like, man, I could have continued playing football. I could have probably played college football. I wouldn't say I was that good anyways, so I probably wouldn't have made it. But at least I would have had like maybe the opportunity. So I could easily dwell, and I have dwelled on those things in the past, especially right after I had left. And it trickled down, and I got into a very unhealthy mental space. But now it's just, like I mentioned earlier, you take the positives out of it. I don't, especially even like with the people who are still in the church. Like I don't have anything against, like, if any current members who've known me, which there probably are. I don't know if anyone's watching right now. Like, listen, I don't have anything against you guys. I still hear, here and there, I hear about, how people view me in the church. Like I'm still like this demon, and people are just so scared to talk to me. I'll encounter some in the mall, and I'll just like wave at them, say what's up, try to say hi, catch up, and they'll like, ignore me, try not to make eye contact. But, I stopped taking that stuff personal as well. I even had a situation where my younger brother, he got married in 2021, and I was supposed to go to his wedding. My brother's still in the church. I was supposed to go to his wedding. I had spent like $500 on a brand new suit. Like I was ready to go. And then the night before, my grandmother had texted me, because originally she was supposed to ride with me to the wedding. My grandmother had texted me. She said, I'm gonna ride with your auntie. I'm gonna ride with her to the wedding. I'm like, okay, cool. And then my brother had texted me saying, don't come to the ceremony, come to the reception afterwards, after the ceremony. So that was extremely painful. I was basically uninvited to the wedding ceremony for my younger brother. This was like my closest friend. This was my brother. But of course, after I'd left the church and I started making videos, they viewed me as a slanderer, right? And that's basically that was his premise in telling me that I can't come to the wedding ceremony because I speak against their church.
Was it at the
No,
church?
No, it was like it was in the, like, someone's backyard. Yeah. It wasn't even at a church location.
And was there some religious ceremony happening at the same time?
No, definitely not. I mean, it was just a wedding ceremony and the reception. So I was extremely hurt. Like I was with my wife and my son. We were eating in a restaurant while this was happening, while I was basically being uninvited. And I was just like, sobbing uncontrollably. Like I couldn't hold it in. I called my auntie and she was like trying to comfort me and stuff. My wife was comforting me, but that was extremely tough because I was excited to go see his big day, regardless of his background in religion. He's still my brother. I don't care what you believe in. You're still my brother. Um, so after that happened, again, I built up this anger.
Yeah.
It's natural. It's natural to be hurt and be angry by it. But of course, you have to realize it wasn't my brother who was the one uninviting me. It was probably somebody in his ear because originally he wanted me to come to the wedding. Originally, he invited me to the wedding, but I'm thinking maybe some elder missionary got in his ear and was like, "Hey, is your brother coming?" Maybe that's not the best idea, I was literally just gonna show up and just say hi to everyone. I haven't seen them in a few years. Just catch up. How you doing? How's the family? What do you do for work now? Just catch up and have good conversations. I was really looking forward to that, but the feeling wasn't mutual. So, but yeah, that was another time where I could have built up this anger and resentment, and I did build up some resentment.
Did you meet the wife before?
I did meet the wife.
Okay.
Yeah, I did meet the wife. She's a nice lady.
She's a member, I'm assuming.
She's a member. Yeah, she's a member. They got him with a Vietnamese sister. Interesting combo. But yeah, she was a nice lady, and I was excited to see how their relationship was going to turn out. They even like visited my house, like we're having a good time just talking, and they came over for my son's birthday one year before they got married, and brought over some gifts, so things were looking up, regardless, like I said, regardless of their religious background and what they believe in. Like, obviously I don't agree with what they believe in, but it shouldn't matter what someone believes in. You should be able to still have a civil conversation with them, and at the end of the day, that's family, and that's blood should be thicker than your religion. You know what I mean? So over the past few years, I started reaching. Actually, my brother started reaching back out to me because I was like, man, F that. I'm not talking to you. Yeah, I don't want to get hurt again. You know what I mean? I was just like, I'll just let him do his own thing. It's the church who's probably told him that I can't come, and it is what it is. I had a pivotal decision to make. Am I gonna make a freaking scene about this, cause a ruckus, and express all this anger that's not really it's not gonna get anywhere. I'm not gonna get anything out of it by just continuing to be angry about it. So I just left it alone. And over the past year or so, we started talking again, and not really about not about the religious stuff. Not about the religious stuff. It's brought up here and there, and we get into our little debates or whatever. But he believes in what he believes in, and I can just only hope. With time, he sees through the veil that the church has over his eyes, and especially with my grandmother too. They've been in now 21 years, and yeah, they're just, and I see them along with other members who have been in for 20 plus years now. And that's a lot of time, man. That's just a lot of time. So I want them to know that whenever they do decide to leave, if they ever feel that conviction to finally, do their own research, not let the church dictate what they can research and look into. If they ever do decide to do that and want to come out, I want to say, I'm here. You can always talk to me. I'm not going to disown you. I'm not going to, disregard you. And it's been amazing to see, over the past few years, other members who have come out and they reach out to me, and they we have very genuine conversations, real conversations, Um, I mean, Anthony, you remember the conversations you used to have in Zion in the church. They just felt really manufactured. You had to almost kind of put up this like facade, and it's like I said, it's really hard to explain, but it felt really manufactured. So now when I talk to these former members outside of the church now, and we go like grab a drink somewhere or something, we just sit and chill and talk for like 3 hours, and it's just genuine. It's like how the family's doing, how's work going, what's going on with you. It's like that's like the best thing, man. It's like when a former member is, and I know I'm gonna feel like that tenfold when my brother leaves and like when my grandmother leaves, it's gonna feel like that like tenfold, and be able to have a genuine conversation with them, because I still feel like I can't really have that, because in the back of my mind I'm always thinking how they view me. Like at the end of the day,
because they always have that in the back of their minds.
I know that for a fact. Like in the back of their minds, I'm Satan. I'm the devil's pawn. I'm a worker of the devil. I'm prowling around like a roaring lion, trying to devour the souls. You know what I mean? And it's hard to have a genuine conversation with someone who, they think of you like they're not going to tell you that. Like my brother, my grandmother's not going to tell me that. But I know it's in the back of their mind, because I know how strong their belief is in, Ahnsahnghong and God the Mother. And we know how that mindset is. But like I said, you could take it in a negative way, or you could take it in a positive way. And, when the time comes for them to see through everything and finally leaves, if that time comes, then I'm always going to be here, and to catch up and just have just a genuine relationship. That's probably the biggest difference now. Like now that I'm 6 years removed from the church, I'm learning how to build more genuine relationships, and just caring for myself, but with like true genuinity, even in my relationship with my marriage with my wife and my son. It's all around been a net positive now, 6 years removed, having a completely new outlook on life. I mean, it's a lot. It's good.
Could we just delve into that a little bit, about how you were talking about like manufactured connections in the organization, while when you leave, you're able to build new, more true connections with people? Because looking back at in the church, you needed to keep up a certain facade. You needed to have the heavenly customs. So lots of, I couldn't say thank you. It's thank Father and Mother. It's always God bless you. Always a bow. Always a handshake like this with the. So like there were definitely like the rules of communication constantly in your brain. There were times where you can have jokes and have fun and and connect, but you always had to be aware that there's always going to be a certain line, and then you couldn't really fully express yourself and what you're going through,
right?
Because if you're going through a struggle, or if you're going through a moment of doubt, or you can't communicate it, because there will be consequences. If people knew that you're having any doubt, if people knew that you were questioning a teaching, or things didn't add up for you, or you're struggling, they're going to communicate that outward, and then you're going to be looked at like a problem. Like, this one has a problem, so that's going to stop your advancement in the church. It's going to stop how others communicate with you, how comfortable people are, and then they're going to police their own language around you even more if they think that something's wrong with you. It's like that spiritual gangrene where like, oh, this one's sick, I don't want to be around their spiritual sickness because I might catch it. So they police how they communicate to you. And then you'll notice that you're going preaching, but you're going to be paired with a certain like leader, opposed to just a regular other member, and they're going to be watching you close. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different environment, but like, how would you say, like, you personally had to stop yourself from building these genuine connections with people while in the church? And how's learning about that been since you left?
Well, first, like when you're in the church, and let's say you meet anybody just on the random like street, you're at work. What's the first thing you're thinking about when you meet a new person? What, Anthony, you can
I bring this person to the church? How can I introduce the church to this person? When's the right opportunity for me to tell them about the Sabbath or God the Mother?
Right. So you always have you always have that in the back of your mind. Like whatever you do, you want to try to maybe bring this person to church. And to be honest, I was terrible at that. I was terrible at that, but I would think about it, and in turn, it would make me kind of like feel guilty because I'm not doing my best to like bring them to Zion, bring them to church. So there's always this like internal battle going on in your head, especially when you're talking to someone you just barely met, like if you go to a new job or something like that. And I feel like that is so it's a big interference when you're really trying to build up genuine friendships and relationships outside of the church. You're always thinking like, man, one, like you said, how am I going to bring this person to church? And two, if you don't preach to them, their blood is on your hands. So it's like, it's almost near impossible to build any type of genuine friendships when you're in the cult, because you have only a couple things on your mindset that's really like overpowering everything else. Like also like you're not in touch with like pop culture, or I still watch sports when I was in a church, but I wasn't the most upkept with it, so like people bring up like movies or something, or reference like a show or something like that, and you're just like the only one who doesn't know what they're talking about, and they're like, you haven't seen that? What's wrong with you? Like so but now, it's kind of like you just like catch up. You're like, oh, I'm getting recommended all these like different movies and shows to watch, so, and then you just find yourself just having more genuine conversations with people. But yeah, back then, like while you're in the church, especially like when you're talking with people inside of church, inside the cult, like you said, like you have to keep up this image, like whether they deny it or not. Like there is this image that you have to keep up, and I feel like it kind of derives from like the Korean culture as well. Like you had like African American, like black brothers trying to do like the part in their head. Like I even tried to get with that for a little while. I'm like, this is not natural.
So for the other Jordan, they tried to make every member kind of like this cookie cutter version of, where there's a particular look, and it's based after Ahnsahnghong's photo, where he like on his head he had the part, so they always tried to part their hair the same way, and
did comb everybody's hair the same way.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they tried to. For me, I never did. I've always kept the same one that I've had.
That's what they want. You were aware that that's kind of what they were looking for, and they based it on that photo.
Yes.
Wow.
You gotta follow the example of Ahnsahnghong down to the.
That style doesn't work for everybody, though, does it?
No, definitely not. So you're always trying to chase being the perfect example, because if you're the perfect example, you get more blessings, right? You get more blessings. You become a leader, right? You become a deacon or whatever, missionary. Then you have somewhat like a status in the church, right? Because you're this perfect image, this perfect example. And what I've noticed is like a lot of these leaders, it's really hard. Like with some of them, I've had like some good conversations. We joke around a lot, but with most of them, it's hard. Like you can't really like joke around with most of them, because they don't want to be viewed as someone who has any type of sinful nature, sinful desires inside of them. They don't want to show any of that. So you become like a robot. You become a robot. And I saw this even when I was a teenager, when the LA church was getting big and we were expanding and we were establishing like more churches all throughout the West Coast. You saw more leaders, more and more, just become like robots. It was like a herd mentality as well. You talk the same way, like you eat the same way, you pray the same way. Like there was no it was just all the same. Like the best way I can describe it was just people. You become a robot in the system, in the cog, and
the WMSCOG.
In the WMSCOG, exactly.
The WMSCOG, yeah.
That's a good one. But yeah, it's just.
What about the accent? What about the WMSCOG accent?
Bible says.
we all started speaking Konglish.
Yeah. you get this like weird version of a Korean English accent, and this guy is like from Mexico or something,
It is interesting how pervasive that is in the WMS. Just how influential that is in people that they just, and I'm sure they're not, maybe some to fit in, but I wouldn't think that you guys are like purposely trying to sound like. It's just you develop it naturally, without even trying it. It's interesting how thick that accent becomes and even sticks with some members, for a while after they leave.
brothers and sisters. Yeah.
How much does God love you? So much.
So muchy. But yeah, I think that's like clear evidence of how the culture is in the cult. That right there, like no one can deny that is like that's what goes on. Like to the point where you start developing some kind of accent, some kind of weird Korean English accent.
Yeah.
And it's so clear and evident that that is basically a result of how the culture is.
But you're not you anymore.
You're not you. You lose yourself.
Exactly. They're trying to make it to where you aren't you. They want a hive mind. They want one, single-minded conglomeration of people that are not going off and doing, thinking their own thoughts or navigating life in their own unique ways. They just want you all to conform to this pattern, this cookie cutter pattern of what it looks like to be a good gospel worker.
And I was in,
and like you said, it's interesting that comes down to even your accent.
Yeah. And I went in, remember I went in, I was like 6 years old when I went in. So these were like my role models. These were like the people I was looking up to. I never knew my father. So I had a lot of men to look up to, and this is how the culture was. So when I had left, I had like nothing to fall back on because that's all I knew. That's pretty much the most. Everything I knew was the church, was the cult, and so I really had to discover myself. I had to, like you mentioned, Anthony. I was trying new things, just really trying to find a good flow. Really, that's like the thing. You really have to find a really good flow in life, and just a really good and healthy routine, like both for the mind, the body, and the spirit. That's pretty much what I'm trying to cultivate now. Like I said.
So,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to just mention going back to now actually going to church now. Like that was something I never thought that I was going to do again. But it came up in a way where it was very unusual, because even like right before I started going, I would think about it, but I'm like, do I really want to go to church again? Like, do I really want to dedicate like my time again to like going to a place and listen to someone talk, and I don't know how they live their life. Like it was just all these different things that I would try to tell myself, like, I don't really, I believe in maybe like there could be some higher power out there. I was never really a full-on atheist. Maybe I started out as a full-on atheist when I had left. But as time went on, I became more agnostic and like, our bodies are so complex. Nature is so complex. Like you look at a cow and they have like several different stomachs. Like there has to be some type of creator that facilitated and created all this. But I would never really think of the God of the Bible or Jesus or anything like that. Up until
do you think do you think one reason or maybe the reason why you wouldn't think of it as the God of the Bible is because I would assume that when you thought about the God of the Bible, you're thinking about the God of the World Mission Society Church of God, which are different
very
things.
Different. Very different.
But I think that's one of the things about that makes these sort of groups more complicated to deal with in many cases, because they do, they use the Bible and they look, Christian in so many ways.
Yeah.
But I would assume that when you come out, then that would make it very difficult to even contemplate like having any sort of embrace of the God of the Scripture, because in your mind, the God of the Scripture is exactly the same as the God that you left. You're probably looking at Bible verses and you're still seeing Ahnsahnghong and Mother. And although I know at this point you've probably figured out that that's not the case. But
you think of God as a dictator before, like that's how it pollutes your mind coming out of the cult. You think of religion and God as like it's a dictatorship, really, but over the past few years, even like my son, he would come up to me. I guess he stumbled upon some videos about like Jesus and like Christianity or whatever. And I don't know how he did. Shame on me, or I should have been supervising him more. But he stumbled upon some videos regarding Christianity and God. And he was like, Daddy, I want to go to church. Like, I want to go to church. Because he was very young. He was probably like 3-4 years old, maybe younger than that, when he was going to the cult. So he doesn't really remember much. He doesn't really have any recollection, just like barely. He doesn't know the doctrine or anything like that. He never knew that. So over the past few years, there have been a couple of situations where he has brought up like, Dad, I want to go to church. I want to try going to church. And I'm like, one day, son, one day. Like, I'm not ready for that yet. I'm not ready for that. And then last year, probably around October 2023, by the way, it was a crazy year for me as well. Like all this stuff was happening. I'll probably get into it. It's a long story. But my wife and my son had seen a very tragic situation after my wife was picking up my son from school. They had witnessed someone in a car in an alleyway repeatedly hitting this woman with a car, like with intent. Like, and it was the most, like my wife covered my son's eyes, but my wife saw everything and it really disturbed her. And she was one, she came out of the church probably 6 months after me. And she got into like trying new things as well, right? She was doing like tarot cards, like reading tarot cards, trying to like get into that, like spiritual and like crystals and all that stuff, but she saw this situation, this unfortunate situation, and she couldn't shake it out of her head. She couldn't, like she was so disturbed by it. So one of her coworkers, she actually invited my wife to like, hey, why don't you just come to church? This Thursday we're gonna have a taco night. We're giving out free tacos. How about you guys come on by? Just see how it is. See if it helps. See if it helps. So my wife asks me, she's like, hey, do you want to go to this church? Right. They're giving out free tacos. And I'm like, you know what? All right. I'll go for some free tacos. I'll go for the tacos, you know? And it also happened to be like literally 3 minutes from my job in Westlake Village. So it was very close. So we're like, yeah, let's go take a visit. So we go, and we go to the church, and I'm just like, I don't want to talk to anybody here. I don't want anybody to approach me. I don't want to hear none of it. I don't want to hear about Jesus. I don't want to hear any of it. Like,
Yeah,
please.
because what I'm thinking is the WMSCOG version where they have, taco night, and then it's like all the chairs are facing the screen to have a seminar just kind of pop ups like surprise.
Yeah. So
was it like that, or
so after we're eating our tacos, right? Then they're saying, oh, we're actually holding like a worship service right now because their church on Sunday, I guess they have very limited space, so they wanted to incorporate like a worship night on Thursday night. Until they had a new area built out with more space, they wanted to implement a Thursday night worship to incorporate more people because they were very limited on space. So I'm like, I feel bamboozled because I didn't think I was coming for a worship night, but it wasn't like really like forced upon me or anything like that. It wasn't like I didn't feel pressured or anything like that. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, my wife probably really needs this. My wife probably really needs to probably hear this message or whatever because of what she saw. Maybe this is going to help because ultimately her coworker, her friend, invited her, and I'm pretty sure she wanted to attend the worship service. So I go into like the sanctuary or whatever, right? And I'm sitting there. First of all, there's a Laker game playing, and I'm like, I'm missing the Laker game for this.
Sanctuary. I was like, what church is
this? So I'm sitting in there, and I like have my phone out. I'm like keeping up with like the Laker game, and as time went on, probably like 5 or 10 minutes, I'm probably like I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, it's probably like not that respectful to do right now. Let me just respect the situation and just, be here for my wife. She's going through some things. She saw this very unfortunate tragedy. Let me just be here for her, So I was listening to the message, and almost immediately I was just like, I had it all wrong. I thought I was going to come to church and sit in this worship service and feel guilty about myself. Feel like, because when you go to the cult, I feel like after every Sabbath day, you always feel down. I always felt down about myself. Like there was always something I could have done better. I feel like it was always pinpointing your wrongdoings, your sins, right? I don't know if you felt the same way, Anthony, but I felt like in the WMSCOG, the way they teach, it always goes back to your hurting mother, or you don't want to, you're a thorn in her side. Like it's like all this negativity. It's like when you think about it,
it's just a guilt trip.
It's just all this
to get you back in line. Yeah,
it's just all this guilt tripping. And so that's what I'm thinking about. That's how Christianity is probably maybe along the same lines as that. But when I was listening to the message, it wasn't any of that. It wasn't any guilt tripping. It was just a sincere message. And I was able to take that sincere message of how to become a better person, how to become a better husband, how to become a better father. And I would see these people go, and I'm thinking, like, what's going through their mind? Like, why do they like coming here so much? And so we kept going. I told my wife, all right, yeah, I'll go. Like we'll go on Sunday or whatever. We went probably like once or twice a month. We just kept going. We kept going. And it turned into, we would go on Sunday, like around 9:30. And then afterwards, we would go out to eat, have a nice brunch or whatever, spend some quality time. We'll go out, So it turned into an opportunity for us to spend more quality time together. And that was a net positive, right? because I'm thinking almost analytically, like, is this going to bring negativity in my life? Is this going to bring anything that's going to bring a downfall, like just anywhere in my life? You know, that's where I was at that point. But I couldn't find anything like that. It was always a positive message that I was listening to, that I was able to apply to myself to just become a better person. There was no discrimination. There was no judgment. There's no judgment. There was I felt none of that, and I was honestly very, very surprised.
How about were there any warnings about hell if you didn't tithe enough?
No, not at all. And the thing that I saw as well is this particular church, they did a lot of things in the community as well. And you know what? They didn't reach out to the news stations.
No cameras, no media.
Yeah, none of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I grew a want to be able to pay for someone's gas. You know, when I'm at the gas station, hey, let me pay for your gas, man, or let me buy a homeless person a meal from wherever that I'm stopped at, you know. And I didn't feel like that when I was in the cult. I didn't feel like I wanted to genuinely help people. You just wanted to bring them to the church because that's how you wanted to help them. You wanted to bring them to the source of salvation, right? Which is in a way like you want to care for these people by bringing them to the church and the truth. Yeah. But it wasn't, I mean, they would come and then they're going to be told to tithe, and, you know, they're going to be wasting all their time in the church. And so it was always a negative outcome. But now it's like in this church that we've been attending now for about a year or so, like no one was really coming up to me like, hey, let's study the Bible. Let's pressuring me to do anything. Like I felt no pressure at all. You know, when I first went, I kind of had like a resting bee face. You know, like I was just like, I'm not trying to be here right now. You know.
Yeah.
You know,
you want people to know that you don't want to be there without just expressly saying it. Yeah.
Exactly. But very quickly, I found that not to be very, like, it wasn't positive. Like it wasn't me, you know. And so I like I said, we kept going. I kept hearing a good message, an honest, good, genuine message, and I was able to understand why people come. And it's a great community as well. And like some people just don't have anything. And church, that community is all they have. And especially like I would see people who would come and they have like these terminal illnesses as well. And they're really like, they're going to church and they have this hope that they're going to be healed or whatever. You know what I mean? And I'm like, and I began to understand like these people, there's people who really need this. Like when I left the cult, I viewed most religion people, and you kind of helped me with this, Jordan, because you're probably like the first like Christian, outwardly like Christian person who I've talked to who was really like, I had a really good conversation with. So before I talked to you, I used to view like most Christian people as like these like bigots, and like they look down on like certain demographics of people. And now I don't see any of that. I really don't see. Of course, you have your extreme people. There's going to be extreme people in all cultures, in all different types of religions. You're going to have your extremists, but the genuine people that I meet and see, as yourself, Jordan, like you have genuine conversations with people who don't believe in Jesus, you know, who don't believe in God, who haven't confessed their faith in the Bible and whatnot. You could still have those genuine conversations with them. And you're probably the first person to show me that. And now I'm seeing that on a regular basis. I'm able to even now see that in myself. Like, no, I don't have any hatred or bigotry towards any group of people. Like that is not at all what the Bible is telling us to do, what the pastor at my current church is telling me to do. Like there's none of that. There's no discrimination, because especially in the cult, Like you're always talking crap about Catholics. Like you're always talking down upon like people who believe in like different things. You're always in the cult. They're always bringing themselves higher. Like we have the truth, right? Let's be prideful that we have the truth, right? Nobody else has it, you know. And
Yeah.
there's none of that. We're in the church that we're going to now. It's just all about just like me personally. I get a good message of how to become a better person, bettering myself. Right? I'm taking care of my temple. I'm taking care of my body. I'm building genuine relationships. I have an infinitely healthier marriage, right? Because I've purged out some of the bad things that I used to do. You know, I've purged those things out, and ultimately it's led to me becoming a healthier person, physically, spiritually, and mentally, especially for my son too, because he loves going. They have this kids area, and I so wish I was a kid in this church, man. Because they don't have to sit down like in a sanctuary and like be quiet, you know, like, or else you're gonna like stand up and you're gonna hold these books and
they're probably not being force fed Passover bread and wine either, are they?
No, not at all, not at all.
Yeah.
And you know, I go to I drop my son off at the kids area whenever we go, and man, they're having a good time in there. They're like, they had a few weeks ago, they had like a jumper in their area, and they're just like having fun and doing all these different things. And my son always has a good time. He's like, because whenever we do go, they have like these donuts all the time as well. He's like, Dad, I want some donuts. Like every time we go, he's like, the first thing he wants to do, Dad, I want some donuts. I'm like, all right, not too much, man, not too much. But it's just it's a great time all the way around. Like I even started volunteering in the church to do security, and that, you know, I had to go through, they did like background checks. I'm like, okay, like that's good. Like you guys are actually doing a background check, you know, for people who work with the kids, they do background checks, you know, and that's just,
you know, that's awesome that they take that seriously. You know, in the World Mission Society, it's like they would put people to work in the kitchen without any sort of like, you know, they'd be serving us old food sometimes because they didn't know any better. They didn't know anything about like, you know, like food practices, and then who knows what these people are that they put in charge of the children. Like there's no background checks or anything like that. Right. Not that like we want to give social security numbers and all that stuff to the church or any more information about people, but
right, exactly.
You know, because I don't trust what they would do with it at the WMSCOG, but it's good that they, you know, they know who's with the kids.
Exactly. And that's how I was able to see like, I want to be able to serve somehow, you know, I want to be able to give back somehow, even though we may not have a lot of money to give to the church. Like, to be honest, we still have not given a dime to the church, just because, you know, we have other things that we're focused on financially. But if we feel compelled to, like, they're not like pressuring you to give money to the church. Like they don't pressure you on that at all. So I was like, I want to give back somehow. So I volunteered to do security. And again, they don't just let anybody do security. Like I was able to do it because I have a military background, and they did a background check and checked my criminal record, and it's clean, of course. And so they allowed me to do so. And yeah, it's just, you know, we're making sure no crazy people, like, you know, people of all walks, of all kinds can come into the church, right? And they don't, it's not like in the WMSCOG, if you're security in the WMSCOG and someone random walks in, that's a no. Like that's like you got to turn them away. Like, what are you doing here? You have to question them and all this stuff. And like, there's none of that. Like, I'm just like, you know, saying what's up to people and just having these good conversations filled with positivity. And yeah, man, it's just it's all like good vibes. It's all good vibes all around. And another thing is that they don't ever like go out and like recruit. Of course, they don't go out. And what I've seen in other regular like Christian mainstream like churches, probably like, is that they don't go out and ask people to come to their church, like, and like almost like have a huge focus on that. They don't have a huge focus on.
I think that highlights a big, a big cultural difference. And this, everything I say in defense or, approval of, the Christian church and churches obviously isn't to be taken as a broad brush thing. There are those that do not fit in line with the things that you're saying. Right. And I've had trouble because so many people have reached out to me over the last few years saying, hey, I've left the WMS. What church should I go to now? Where should I go? Mm-hmm. And honestly, like 99.9% of the time, I felt nothing but like just hesitation to encourage them to go find a Christian church because, there's a variety of reasons for that. One, I think it's just most of the time it's going to be healthier to just give it some time, give it some breathing room. Don't go to a church for a while because it's going to be just a massive trigger fest if you step foot into one of these, these buildings and these congregations that you've been told for the past however many years is just a pagan, idol, sun worshiping, whatever. But also it's just because I know that there's so many churches out there that just don't function healthy. And I think, most of them don't get to the unhealthy level, fortunately, as groups like the WMS. Yeah. But I'm really glad here. And this is what I know, there are those out there that are healthy and that are, I think, a more accurate reflection of what Christianity is really all about. Definitely. But I think, that what you're talking about, how they don't go out and recruit, and the WMS is all about recruiting. They're all about that. I think that just highlights the different underlying goals that are at the heart of these different organizations, where I think for the WMS, that push to bring people in, to go out and get people in every night of the week, they're sending members out. Trying to get people in. I think that shows at the heart of that, at least my assessment of that, is that comes down to money. It comes down to growth of the organization. They want the organization to grow for appearances. They want, because that will look better to the outside world if they have more people in it, and because it's going to bring in more money. And I think also with that, there is belief in the doctrines, that people are doomed who are not in the church. But I think that's almost, if you get down to the heart of the organization, I would say like that as a motivation, the motivation to prevent people from going to hell or to help people find salvation, I'd say that's down the list in terms of what the actual priority is. And I think there's many other things that come before that. And that's just kind of one of them. But I think for groups like churches like this that you're talking about, I think there are churches out there that are just, they fundamentally want to follow as best as they can what they think Jesus taught and how they think Jesus taught we should live and how we should treat people and what our lives should look like. And so for them, they don't have that like, oh, we got to grow because it'll give us prominence and influence and money. Although that can get into any church. But it's encouraging and awesome to hear that that's not something that, you're not being pushed to tithe. You're not being pushed to go out and bring people in. And so if you do those things, it's coming from a genuine, desire in yourself. It's coming from the heart. And that's ultimately what I think healthy Christianity and unhealthy groups like the WMS is that on the one, you have things that come from the heart, like what the culture propagates something that pushes you, at least in when things are going correctly, that it's getting you to do things, to behave in a way where you're doing it from the heart. You want to pay for somebody's gas. You want to help the homeless guy on the street. Where on the other hand, your motivations are so mixed up with one, you're just kind of being robotic. You're doing it because that's what everybody else is doing, or you're doing it out of fear, or you're doing it out of, whatever the motivations are, but it's not coming from a place of this is just who I am. And I have a genuine care for this person in need that's in front of me. There's always strings attached. There have to be, like you said, there have to be camera crews around. If I'm gonna go out and do a meal train for the homeless, well, I gotta call Channel 10 News to let them know that I'm doing it. And like that I think that's such just a clear distinction, and just that these simple examples you're giving between WMS and what I think is healthy Christianity.
Yeah, I noticed.
Anthony, it looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, I just noticed that in the World Mission Society, if you wanted to participate and be security like you're doing at your current church, and you were not doing the tithe, would that be possible?
Oh, definitely not.
No, like you need to tithe to do anything. Like they need your money, and that's when they consider you worthy to participate. But it's like you're allowed to do it even without doing that. And the other thing I would feel too is that if you were to be in the World Mission Society and have that desire to help the homeless guy and give money, the church would not look positively on that, because to them, they would rather you give the money to them than to this starving person. So those are just like another thing to notice. But when you joined your current church, and you have a unique way of entering into it opposed to the average person, have you been transparent or open or had conversations about the sort of spiritual traumas that you've had in the past?
Yeah.
Have they had any sort of insight about how to acclimate you back into regular Christianity opposed to this cult Christianity that you had before? Was there any sort of thing that they did or provided that helped you be able to switch into it?
Yeah, to be quite honest, I had one conversation in the very beginning, late last year, with the pastor, and explained to him my background, about the cult that I was in and everything. And his response to me was just, I felt it was very genuine. Like he was just like, take all the time you need. Like if you feel like you want to come to church and receive the good message that we're sharing, come. But we're never gonna pressure you. Like what he was telling me was, I'm never gonna feel that type of pressure. Also, he brought up the example of, like, it's like if you get out of a bad relationship, right? You get out of a bad relationship, you don't want to enter a new relationship. It's probably going to take some time for you to heal from that. And that's kind of the message that I got from him. But we've only had a couple conversations, from the very beginning. And ever since that, I'll still like say hi, say what's up to him, and just listen to the message that he's presenting. But when I first brought it up to him, I kind of made it kind of like my litmus test. Like, what is he going to tell me? How is he going to respond to me? And I was going to take his response, and through his response, I was going to see exactly where his mind is in terms of leading the church and like wanting to lead members to Christ. So I'm not going to share everything that he told me, but basically what he told me led me to believe that, okay, he's in it for the right reasons. Like he's pastoring for the right and correct reasons. And he gave me the correct advice that I needed to hear at the time. That allowed me to feel comfortable. Like I felt comfortable. I didn't feel like I was in a hostile situation, being around all these other Christian, Jesus Christ believing, believers. I didn't feel like I was in a place where I was being judged or anything like that, because still to this day, I can't sing. Like whenever they sing along to their song, like they go all out. They have like a full on band. They have like a drummer and like a bass, like a couple guitarists and a few singers up there. Like they go like all out, and like the way they sing, it's just like you feel it. But still, I can't bring myself to sing during like a worship service, and I know it's because of my past, being in the cult. I used to love singing. I was in a choir, I was doing all that stuff. And still, like, I'm still feeling some of that residue from when I was in the cult. Like whenever like during the worship services and they're singing their worship songs, like I still to this day cannot bring myself to sing outwardly. Like I'm probably just humming, or I'm just like sitting there silent, you know. But I at the end of the day, I know no one's really looking at me like, why isn't he singing? You know, because in the church, in the cult, in the WMSCOG, you see someone down the pew or whatever, and you see if they aren't singing, you're thinking, oh, they have bad faith. They must have bad faith, you know.
Yeah.
Their mind isn't focused on Father and Mother. They're probably thinking about worldly things right now, you know.
I remember actually a leader telling me that whoever is not singing the new songs, it's a sign that they are spiritually sick, and that when he would go up on the altar and the new songs were being sung, he would look out and scan the room to see who was singing and who wasn't, so he could make a mental note of who he has to keep his eyes out on.
So ridiculous, man.
How much more ignorant of just basic human psychology could you be? I mean, the moment you say something like that, how can you not know that you're just going to get a bunch of puppets mouthing words to a song that are just doing it because you told them to, or you threatened? I mean, it's just bizarre.
I'll say this. I'll say this. When I was on my way out and I stopped believing, and I actually had started going to, it was for my last maybe month at the church, I would go Sabbath day at World Mission Society, and then Sunday I'd go to church in a Sunday church. Like, I call it like a different church. And when I probably 2-3 months before I was fully leaving, I was building up confidence to leave, and you know, kind of going through the phases. It became difficult to sing the new songs, and I don't think that it was, you know, a spiritual sign. I think you need to kind of believe what you're singing. And I stopped believing, and it just felt wrong to do. And we always used to teach, like, you can't worship a Jesus, you have to worship the Jesus.
Right.
And when I realized that I had the Jesus and a Jesus mixed up, and I was worshiping a Jesus at the World Mission Society, but not the Jesus of the Bible, it just made lifting up like songs of praise so difficult to do. And you know, I'm sure that, you know, it kind of takes a lot to fully commit to singing his songs, but I think probably in time, like, you know, when you feel it, you're gonna get there again. You know, it is for some people it's just singing, but for other people it's a devotion, you know? So I think that's how you're viewing it deeper than most people.
And you don't feel pressured. You don't feel like you have to change yourself right away. Because in the WMS, you feel like you have to change right away. That there's no time. Like, Father's coming tomorrow. You know, like you got to change right away. But it's a totally different situation now. Like, just, you know, I don't even feel that it's like a requirement to sing like during worship service. Like, hey, yeah, they're going to encourage you to do so. And most people do, but you don't feel like it's a requirement for your salvation and to devote and to express your devotion to Jesus Christ. And that's just something I'm very appreciative of, because, you know, for 15 years, it was always, you gotta do this and that, and you gotta do it right away. And there's no time, brother. There's no time. Like, you got to do it because Father might come in the next hour. Like, you know?
Yeah. I'm just thinking about how if you know, you kind of flip the situation around, where instead of coming to a Christian church after having left the WMS and you expressing the difficulties and the challenges that you face there, how that pastor at your current church responded compared to if somehow that situation was flipped and maybe you'd had a bad experience or some sort of negative experience in a church before, and then you came to the WMS and you were expressing that, the differences of how that conversation would have gone. And I know the leadership, one thing is they would have taken advantage of that as quickly as they could to say, hey, well, the reason you had that experience is because every other church is a sun worshiping, pagan, Satan, basically. You were in an evil, dark place, and we're the only true church
around demons.
But next, they wouldn't have given you space, though. Also, they wouldn't have given you that breathing room. They would have said, today, right now, there's this impending doom, and you don't have time to think about this or to wallow in the pain that you've experienced. Just, you got to get your act together now, or else. And so I just think that's again another contrast between how these different groups operate, and just highlights. I think it's so, you just explaining how I think a healthy situation should go with a pastor highlights how unhealthy the WMSCOG is, and how it functions, and how it relates to its members, and how the leadership just takes advantage of, knowingly or unknowingly, and manipulates and coerces members to fall in line with their agenda, with almost complete disregard for what that person in front of them actually needs and what is actually best for them. That's not on their mind. That's not what's like navigating for them or guiding their conversation with you.
Right.
Rather, it's what will benefit the organization, what needs to happen to get them in line with the agenda.
And I do a lot of comparing and contrasting, naturally, because I was in a church for 15 years, and I look and I'm like, this church is growing. Like, when we first went last year, we were in one building, and very shortly after, they had to like have people sit outside because the building was full. And then the following, like this past February, they constructed a new building like down the street on the same block, and now that place is getting full. And like, I'm thinking to myself, wait, but I thought other churches didn't grow. I was always told that they're losing, like the mainstream Christian like faith is like declining. Like these churches are losing members. But now I'm like seeing it in real time, like the genuine growth that they're having. And it's not, and again, like I said, they don't go out and recruit people,
Yeah. A few different cult groups always say we're the fastest growing church in the world. I heard about Shincheonji. I heard about the World Mission Society. Like, all of their individual people believe that about their own church, but
that's not even something they bring up.
Yeah.
Like the church, they don't bring up like, oh, we've grown this amount of members over the past year or so. Like, here are the statistics on how much we've grown, and there's none of that. There's
no introductory video that shows all the beautiful buildings that they've constructed.
None of that.
They're not leading you in and showing the Queen's awards and all that, the President awards hanging on the walls.
None of that bogusness.
Yeah. Which I have a couple of those I've never shown before. I should have. I always forget.
Oh,
I need to pull those out one of these days.
There needs to be a ceremony, Jordan.
I know. Yeah. Put like a cape on me and staff in my hand.
That'll be great. But yeah, going through this like experience, it's been eye-opening. Just because, like I said, after leaving the church, I was just so against religion as a whole. Like, it just turned me off, And now being around some genuine, Christian believing people who have their own real life problems, and I get to see how they kind of navigate life as well through the conversations that we have. And I see like the care that they have for their family. I see the care that they have for their community. We recently had in the area where the church is in Westlake Village, there were some fires in Camarillo, like I want to say about 20 minutes west of the area. And it's common for fires to happen in the area, and the church will always reach out and will always say, like, if members have will encourage members to open their doors for some of these people who are losing their homes, or the church will open their own doors and will serve meals, and they will help these people who are in genuine need. And you see that, and I see I see all these programs that they're doing for orphans, for children who don't have families, and they're organizing these camping trips for these children, and they're treating these children like little princes and princesses, you know, giving them like all these gifts and like giving them a good time on these camping trips. And I just see all this, and I'm like, man, this is like, they're doing really good, genuine work for the community. And I got to a point where it's hard to be against it. I can't fight it any longer, because there was a time in the beginning where I was trying to just fight it. Like, I don't want to go to church again. I don't want to get up on a Sunday at like 7:00 and like drive somewhere to, you know, go sit in a building. And you know what I mean? Like, you know, you think about these little things like, oh, do I really have to get up? You know what I mean? But I stopped fighting it. And I just did it. I went with my family. I went with my wife. I went with my son. And again, like after every like worship service, we go out, we have a nice meal. We have good times together. We come back home, we chill for the rest of the day. Like, me and my wife, we like getting up early now. Like we like getting up early and like having the rest of our day to us. So we have time to go to the gym. We have time to do things around the house, right? Prepare stuff for the week. And it ultimately creates like just a healthier environment all the way around, mentally, physically, and spiritually. This is like my thing. Like it's honestly been very beneficial. And I can't, like I said, I'm speaking for myself, because this is the experience that I'm going through, and I know other people have different views about it, and it's totally fine. It's totally okay. Like, if someone has a different view about it, like if I was in a cult and someone had a different view about like not believing in Ahnsahnghong or God the Mother, you would view them a certain kind of way. Like, if they talk down upon your God, like you would view them a certain type of way. Now, if someone like has this like hatred for Christianity, or like talks down on like Jesus and whatnot, I'm like, it's okay. I understand. There's a reason why you think like that, and that's totally valid. Like I will try to see where you're coming from. You know, with like complete honest and genuinity, like I will see where you're coming from, and I will totally understand why you view things that way. And it's okay. I will still be your friend. I will still be here for you if you need someone to talk to, and I'm not going to look down on you in any type of way. And that's just that's just how I'm trying to live life. And it's so much more gratifying than the lifestyle in the cult. It's so much more gratifying.
Well, Jordan, I was going to say that the progress, I know that, okay, for instance, from when you made your first video and when you first left, one, you know, physically you got into much better shape. Then, you know, you went to school, you finished getting your education. Your family life has, you know, continued to progress and went in a great direction. And then also with your life of faith and joining a church and finding happiness, you went from a place of anger to a place of peace. Yes. There's been a lot of really big strides in so many different aspects of your life, from where you were when you were in that in the World Mission Society to when you first left to today. I know that the World Mission Society tries to make the image that as soon as you leave the church, life is misery. Like, you leave and, you know, you're demon possessed, and, you know, your life is just meaningless, and, you know, you're going to be depressed, and, you know, you're going to get potentially into a car accident, or all these different things are going to befall you, and it's going to be a sad life, and it's going to be a painful existence until the day you die, you know. But it doesn't seem like that's the case for almost anybody who leaves. You know, I think everybody, you know, they do walk away with some scars and some trauma from, you know, all the stress and propaganda and all the stuff that they had to exist under in the World Mission Society. But I think it's great to see that, one, there's a light outside of the tunnel when you first leave. But then even beyond that, if you put in the work, there's even more progress to be made, and so far you can go. And, you know, it's not a miserable life. I think that you're a really great example of, you know, continuing on after you leave, and that, even though when you leave at first, you feel like you can make a lot of progress. It looks like, 5 years later for you. Is it 5 years?
Yeah, 2018, 6 years. Yeah.
And it's just been like a continuous thing. So
yeah,
I think that it's great for, your example and for the video to be made showing that, there is hope for more.
Definitely.
And you're not going to get stuck in, the pain and the anger and the confusion and all these terrible things that you exist under when you first leave. You can cultivate those and turn it into something very positive. So
Definitely.
I think that's fantastic that you've been able to share that.
Yeah, no, it's
think,
been. You want me to go?
Well, I was just going to say, I think there's a visible difference, like a visible difference. And I think if people go back and watch, it's been a while since I've watched that initial interview, but I think if people go back and watch that one compared to now, I think they would see now a healthier, more joyful and at peace person. That's what I perceive from you, and not that you weren't, we're just totally off. The first conversation was great, but I'm just saying, I think the progress that you've made is visible, and you do just seem more at peace, happier, healthier, in a lot of ways. And so that's really cool to see. And like you said, Anthony, hopefully an encouragement for those who are in a similar spot that just feel stuck, or maybe like, they've left and things, or they're thinking about leaving, but just think things couldn't possibly improve, or things are just going to go terribly. I think, most of the people, or if not all of the people we talk to, who have been out for any amount of time, their lives have improved and seem to improve incrementally over the years as they get more and more distance between being in the church and getting out.
Definitely, for sure. And I see it in my marriage too, and like my relationship with my wife and my son. Because like when I was, in the church, and especially the time when I was a leader in the youth group, I was a terrible husband. I was a terrible father because I wasn't present. I was always stressed about like going preaching and creating some type of curriculum for my group on the Sabbath, and you're just always like, especially as a leader, you have to go to like those cleanups on the Sundays, those blood drives. Like you have to go, because if you don't, then you look bad. Like it looks bad on you, and you're gonna end up losing your blessing, right? So I compare and contrast how I was before, and I was not present. I was not present with my wife and with my son, and our relationship was pretty damaged before. It was not in a good state. But now it's like all the way around. It's been a complete turnaround, a total net positive. My relationship's good. My son is doing good in school. My marriage is healthy. Like there's nothing I can really complain about, really. And I'm very thankful to be in the spot that I am now. And it definitely takes work. It definitely takes time, to get to that point. And I still have a lot of things to improve upon on myself, in many aspects. I still have a lot to improve on. But I don't look at it as like a dread. I don't look at it in like a dreadful way, like, or I have to like rush. I have to improve like right away. I have to do it right away before Father comes. I don't view it. It's not like a time crunch or anything. It's like I take it easy. I present challenges to myself. Like exercise and eating healthy, and it gets easier over time. It gets easier when you present you present yourself with some challenges, and you make life easier. Everything kind of just falls into place. And yeah, I'm just very thankful. That's all I can really say now. I'm just super thankful. Now that I've been going to church and always receiving a good message to better myself, to better my relationships, and to look at everything in the most positive way. I can't complain about much. There's always something. You got to pay bills, you got to go to work, but like I don't find myself complaining about that kind of stuff anymore. It's just life has definitely made a complete turnaround for myself, and I'm very thankful for you guys. I got to meet Anthony in person a couple years ago. We got to hang out for a little bit in Colorado. Like that was pretty cool. Just meeting some of the former members. Like I love everyone. Like especially us like former members. We have a very great community amongst ourselves where we can even like bring newer, fresher former members and kind of ease them into life itself.
Bearing fruit.
Yeah. Like that's just the coolest thing. It's just the coolest to be able to bring someone who's struggled, who's kind of struggling. And that's kind of like I didn't really have that until I started like making videos and like started reaching out to other former members. Like when I left, it was like I was literally like I had all the shades closed and I would just like be by myself in a dark room, just like playing video games or something, just like not really doing anything, just withering away in my sadness and hurt and just being angry. And now we have the opportunity to be able to, take these former members who just left and kind of ease them into things and let them know like, hey, it's gonna be all right. It's gonna be hard. It's a journey. It's definitely a journey. That you're about to go on. It's definitely not the easiest thing. But I'm glad we can make it easier on some people, who are just leaving. And I hope this video makes it even easier, for those people.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of ex-members, just the idea of going back to church, it's kind of like you just went and you just spent so much time and you just spent so much of your, it was draining, completely draining. So it seems like a daunting thing. And, I look at it maybe kind of like similar to the gym. I always say the hardest time to go to the gym is that first day.
Yeah.
Convincing yourself to go, building up the, the courage. You're going to pack the bag. You're going to go. Are you feeling well? You make all these excuses, but when you finally get into the habit, it's so good and so easy and such a good positive impact. I would suppose that it would be similar, like the hardest day to go back to, a church. If anyone can walk whatever path that they want, but if you wanted to go, I'm sure there are ex-members who have the idea, maybe one day I will, maybe one day I'll check it out, maybe one day I'll open myself up to it again. But that first day is probably the hardest day. But I also wouldn't recommend doing it immediately after leaving.
Definitely.
What do you think would be a good way to tell if an ex-member is ready to kind of take a step back into some sort of faith? Like what would be the thing for you if you had to?
My fat ass was lured in through taco night.
So whenever you're hungry enough to go to church for tacos, it's time.
Yeah. And that's like, I guess, I mean, it's going to take time. Like even at that point, I was just like, I'm not going back to church. Like, no, I don't want to do it. But it kind of like broke the ice, it kind of, that little thing that they did, little taco night, like it kind of broke the ice for me. And like the little events that they would hold or whatever, like it just broke the ice. So if you're open to it, like if you think you feel ready, like I don't even know if you can ever really like pinpoint the time where you can say that you're ready to go back to church, because I didn't for myself. I couldn't really pinpoint in that very moment. Like I was just like, yeah, I'll go have some tacos. Like, but also my wife was the one who really needed it as well. Like she was the one who saw an unfortunate tragedy and she really needed it for herself. And I was kind of questioning, like, is she still going to want to continue to go? And I was just like, if she still wants to go, like, fine, I'll go with her. And she gave me the option, like, you don't have to come with me. Like, you don't have to come. Like, you could stay home. Like she completely, she understands like where I come from. Like she was also in the cult as well. She wasn't there as long as I was, but she understood where I came from, and she would understand if I didn't want to go, and she wouldn't get upset with me, you know. So, but yeah, it's hard for me to really say at like and recommend at like identifying a point where you can say that you're ready to go back, because I guess you don't really know, you know. I guess the situation will arise, and if you want to take that opportunity to go, then take it and see how it goes. And if you don't like it, then don't go back, you know. And if you do, then keep going and try to cultivate, you know, something positive out of it. And that's just kind of the avenue that I took. You know, I encountered a fork in the road. I could have just said, no, I'm cool off of it. I don't want to really go back to church. But I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, at the end of it, I'm receiving a positive message. So that's how it started. I'm receiving a positive message. I'm not being taught to look down upon anybody, to judge anybody, to like any of that. I went for a positive message to better myself. And that's kind of where I was at that point. And I'm still at that point where I'm continuously receiving a message where just at the end of it, how to be a good person, how to be a good father, a better husband, how to better the community, you know, in a very genuine way, not in a way where you want to get attention, you know, for doing these acts. And, you know, it doesn't come from that place. It comes from a place of really wanting to help people. And yeah, that's my answer to that. Really, I don't really know where someone can say and identify like, yeah, I'm ready to go back to church. I can't pinpoint that for sure. But if the opportunity arises, and if you want to take that opportunity to go, then take it and see how it goes for you. You know, it's going to be different for everybody. Everybody's going to have their different reasons to go to church and whatnot, and that's totally fine. Yeah.
For some, it might be donuts.
Yeah.
For some, it might be cheeseburgers.
Donuts. Yeah.
Could be pizza. Doesn't have to be tacos.
Exactly. Pretty good tacos, though.
Were they?
Yes.
Because you had a hard shell, just like the taco. So
yeah, they're pretty good.
Well, it's definitely cool to see where you're at, and you know, I think one thing that sticks out to me about the conversation is obviously your progress, but just how you mentioned, you know, the church opening up its doors or encouraging members to open up its doors to those in need who may have lost houses in fires. How your church it has a culture that's actually, you know, probably without even explicitly telling you or commanding you to do this, you're going out into the world and just finding yourself compelled to want to take care of people, to want to pay for somebody's gas, and just these heartfelt actions that you're just, you know, your experience in this community
gas is
then sending you out into the world. Yeah, I believe it.
$4 a gallon.
You out into the yeah, so that's a sacrifice, right?
Yeah,
but it's doing that in you. It's doing like this change at a heart level, like an inside of you, deep level, where it's real, it's genuine. And so I guess I say all that to say to those possible members watching this, or people who might be on the fence, you know, because when you say that, what I hear is just, so they're just at least attempting to just do what Jesus said to do, right?
Yeah,
feed the poor, take care of the homeless. Blessed are the poor in spirit, and you know, the outcast, the downtrodden. I mean, his push toward disciples was to take care of the least of these, like to have compassion and mercy on those who most need it. And so when you say all that, I'm like, oh, okay, so they're just genuinely, they're trying to do what Jesus commanded. And then, you know, contrast that again with the World Mission Society Church of God. And my thing here is just to say to possible members listening or watching, is just to ask yourself, why doesn't my church, why doesn't the WMS do this? Why is that not a normal thing that you would ever see put? Maybe you'll have the stray member, here and there that's kind of gone somewhat rogue, and they're being kind to a homeless person, or they are doing that just for whatever reasons they might have. But why is that not like a cultural thing in the WMSCOG? Because this is something that, again, I would just say just go read Jesus's sermons, his teachings, what some of his most clear commands are all about. And it has to do with these practical things of just caring about people. Love your neighbor as yourself. And so why is it that you have these churches that are supposedly following Satan, sun worshipers? Why is it that they're more closely resembling what the early Christian church looked like and what Jesus's commands look like? Why do their behaviors and their actions, and even what seems to be going on internally inside of them, why does all that in these pagan worshiping, pharisaical, Satan following churches, why do they look more closely to what Jesus said we should look like than the World Society Church of God? Because they're not doing these things. They're turning away homeless people who come to their doors. They're very quickly escorting them off the property. And telling members, don't go preach to them. Maybe, this is all these things that we've talked about 1,000 times before on the channel. And I just think it's worth considering, why is that? Why is that? That there's something that doesn't add up there. And I think if you take the time to consider that, hopefully you'll see that as well.
Definitely. Yeah, Jesus, he went to like the prostitutes and stuff. If you're a prostitute in the WMSCOG, if you express that, like, man, get out of here. Get kicked out. Jesus went to the least of the least, man. It doesn't matter, your background or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're gonna care. We're gonna care for you regardless of whatever your orientation, anything, regardless. Like the true, like from what I'm now discovering. What I have been discovering is just care for them, like just show them love, like, be there for them, be a real friend, just, it's gratifying for yourself as well. Like it's, this, Jordan, you too, Anthony, like when you're just genuine and, it doesn't matter what they come from, what they believe. If you're just a genuine friend, like you have no stress upon yourself. Like it's a positive all the way around. That's definitely how I see things now, and very thankful. Yeah, can't be more thankful.
Yeah. Well, unless you have any other questions or things you want to get into, I think we can bring this to a close. Did you have anything else?
No, I'm just happy for Jordan and his progress, and I think it's great that you show a positive example for how much progress you can make in life after you leave. So I'm thankful that you came back on to share this, and that so many things are going well for you. And I just hope continued success for you and your family.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks a lot for coming on. I guess we can do this again in 5 years. We'll see you again and bring you back on.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's see what happens.
Hopefully we can get you on before then. It'd be fun to have you on for.
We haven't
done a live video for a while, but it's always fun to give others a chance to jump in on some of those. So
yeah, definitely. If you ever have any other videos or lives going on, my doors are definitely open. Reach out, and I would definitely love to come on, just have a good conversation with you guys, just spreading positivity. And, it's just for the audience, this is like, these great like studios videos, man, you've helped out so many people. Like, you probably don't even know how many people you've helped out. You probably do, because you probably get a lot of emails and stuff. Anthony, you probably see the same thing as well, but there's so many people that have been helped. Like my auntie, like she's a huge fan of the show. She watches a lot of the episodes, even though she's never a member of the church, but she was a family member of family of members of the church. So that's why she loves watching your videos. So yeah, I just want to give a shout out to you guys, man. You guys do great work, you. And it helps so much more than you probably see. Like it helps so much, and it definitely helped me for sure. Like every time you guys come out with a new video, I'm probably one of the first viewers, maybe not, I don't know, but it's just really cool. It's just really cool to see, and I'm hopeful that this video will also help a lot, in terms of getting back into the faith.
Like, share, subscribe, okay?
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
and boom, baby, for the Pit Pod, man. I love Tony. And
there you go. You got to get one of those in there.
Got to get one of those in there.
cover all of our bases.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you for that. That means a lot. It's always nice to be reminded of that and why it is we keep doing it. I actually had. I won't mention any names, but I had a current member kind of confront me, quote unquote. He wasn't like mean about it or anything, but just he was obviously upset and not happy with the continued putting out of videos on this particular subject. And he asked me why do you keep doing it? And with sort of some insinuations that it was about money or something like that.
Just drop it.
So anyways, it's yeah. That would be something that, it would be kind of fun to do not a response necessarily to this particular person, but just sort of toward that question. Why is it that we keep doing this? And going into both the benefit for those, that are being helped by it, and then the taking a little bit of a look again at the harm that the WMS causes. And I think kind of highlighting those. And that's kind of what I did in my response. And he didn't so much in response to that when I kind of explained why I did it. He's like, oh, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. And so anyways, yeah, it's always nice to hear and be reminded of the impact that it's having, because I do kind of forget. I get a lot of emails, but I guess it's nice to hear it in person from somebody who's really impacted by them. So thank you, and Anthony, thank you, because you're doing it too, and Jordan, you too. I mean, just being willing to come out and share, and you have your own channel, and
yeah. So I still have people reach out here and there. You can still get emails here and there. And I would like to apologize to some of those who I haven't gotten to respond. And, because it does get to be a lot. Like I probably experience it on a lower scale than what you guys experience. And I know how it is. Like you get these emails and these messages, and unfortunately you can't always respond to everybody. Like there's one former member. His name is Luis. I'll shout out Luis, man. One of my really good friends. He reached out to me on Instagram, and I had never replied to him. And it wasn't until probably a couple years later. This was a few years ago, and I finally responded to him oh man, I'm sorry. And it's been a couple years. I didn't respond. It happens. It happens, guys. It's
I do that too. Hey, let me jump in on your apology, because I have lost count of the number of those that I've had. I don't respond to all the messages or emails. And so I'm sure that's frustrating for a lot of people. I wish I could.
Well, Jordan, if you want, because I think that you kind of have two emails, one for Great Light and then one for the for the World Mental Society specifically. So maybe just if things moved over to that other email, it might help.
Yep. Yeah. So there, Anthony and Edgar help monitor another email, and we were trying to get Kelsey access to that too, but we just I can't remember what happened. We just could not. I think because she's in California and or she's on the East Coast. It thought she was trying to hack into the email, so we couldn't get her in. But anyways, Anthony and Edgar, we have multiple people helping monitor the email. So what is that email?
WMSCOG answers at greatlakesstudios.com.
Okay, so WMSCOG answers at greatlightstudios.com. Yeah, if you do want to get in contact with a former member, or you want to ask about maybe doing an interview, that's the one to reach out to. And I know that some emails still come to the other ones, and I try to get back to those, but I know I don't get back to all of them. So I apologize for that. But yeah, well, this has been fun, guys.
Definitely.
Jordan, thanks for coming on. It's really cool to see where you're at. And yeah, we'll stay in touch and hopefully get you back on again soon for another conversation about something.
For
We
sure.
can think something up.
Definitely.